future I want. There are stories everywhere we look. There are stories that we laugh over, stories that break our hearts, and stories that make you long for things imagined. I, for one, love the stories my father tells. After dinner, when the dishes are all piled up, waiting to be washed, and we're all sitting together stretching our legs, my sister and I beg him for a funny story from his childhood. He does so with gusto, reenacting certain parts and adding sound effects to make the story come alive. The setting for most of his stories center around his childhood home. In his own words, it was situated beside a brook where his older sisters would wash their clothes. During his childhood, their house was the only one for miles around, and as night came on, the darkness crouching right outside their front door would give him the creeps. In the safety of daylight, he and his friends would go fly kites in the fields surrounding their house, or borrow the family bike and explore the city. Can you imagine something so idyllic? How many times I've wished that I could have seen my father's childhood home as it was before. Of course, the house still stands there, with my aunts and uncles living nearby. But they aren't the only ones living there anymore. A lot of people have moved into the neighborhood, so much that there's not much left of the grassy field. In fact, there's not much space left, period. So many houses have been built around my father's family house that winding alleyways are what you have to walk on to reach the main road. No fields are there for children to fly their homemade kites, and more often than not, their kites end up hanging limp and entangled in the electric wires up above. There's no clear garbage disposal system, so the brook has become a handy dump site. The waters that run through it now are dark and little more than a trickle during hot summer days. No one comes to splash around and cool themselves in the brook's waters anymore. I laugh over my father's stories, but my heart breaks whenever I visit his childhood home and see how far it has fallen from being the clean, fresh place I have always imagined it to be. What happened to my father's childhood home has happened all over the Philippines. How many places have you seen with roofs overlapping, walls brushing shoulders with neighboring walls, and alleyways littered with trash? How many pictures have been printed in newspapers of water-clogged roads and flooded communities? It seems almost like an impossible task to be able to turn the Philippines into the land full of natural resources it was before. But I'm not here to complain about the country's seemingly endless problems. I'm here to show you what the Philippines is like in the world I've created by imagination and hope. In this world of mine, as the sun stretches and begins its daily climb towards the west, the roofs of every house stretching for miles will gleam as a greeting to the sun. These roofs are covered with solar cells, an expensive commodity now, but who's to say it cannot become cheaper and more affordable in the future? Electricity bills will no longer be the cause of my parents' wrinkles or gray hairs. The streets outside my home will have bicycles moving alongside cars. These bikes actually have their own lane to reduce the chances of bikers getting run into. A lot of the cars do not spew out black smoke that causes me to cover half of my face to avoid inhaling the fumes. In this world, I can actually see a river like the ones described in books. A river glistening and clean in the sunlight, its color the blue of the skies, and its water bubbling and tripping over rocks. The stars are seen in all their brilliance from the city, their sparkle not covered by smog and pollution. I imagine a world where my children can climb strong, majestic trees, roll in a field of green grass, and swim in a brook not black with trash. It is a world of balance, this world I have often thought of. Balance between technology and nature. It is a world where I can enjoy the comforts that technology brings, like using electricity and surfing the internet, without worrying that I am depleting natural resources. In this world, a man or woman can find jobs that pay enough to provide well for their families. It is a world where I do not have to see children begging for food on the sidewalks, and men drinking their worries away because they have nothing to feed their family. A world not ruled by greed, where the rich oppress the poor, or waste, where people think that food and other commodities are endlessly supplied to us. Food and water are not endless things, that will forever be there for the masses. Already, families living in the squatters' area experience the lack of water when a single pump cannot provide enough for washing clothes and dishes, making meals, and taking a bath. In my imagined world, people have become innovative and have started to make wise use of the resources God has given us. Rainwater is stored in containers to be used later. The sun's energy is being converted into electricity, and paper is not used to make silly airplanes, but is recycled as many times as possible. Will this world I have imagined remain in my head with no possibility of becoming a reality? I do not believe that. Many people around the world have seen the numerous problems that affect and threaten us. The message of conserving our world is not an unfamiliar idea to the masses. Billboards, shopping bags, and documentaries have educated the people on the current reality of the fast depletion of natural resources. In fact, leaders from around the world will meet soon to discuss problems that affect every single country in the world, and not just the Philippines. Do we have to wait for their meetings to finish before we start to act? My imagined world can become one possible future for the Philippines. Only God knows what is to come. But should we not act and strive to avoid the alternative? A world stripped of its natural resources to fuel our growing industries and filled with starving families struggling to survive each day? Little actions that we can do every day to help conserve our resources can lead to something bigger, like conserving the future for our children. I want my children to grow up in a world where everyone is responsible for what he or she does. Our country may be like this today because too many times people do not think of others or their own responsibility when they dump their trash anywhere, be it a candy wrapper or a week's worth of trash. Changing a rather unstable country to a sustainable one should not depend on meetings because, although these meetings give us plans and ideas on what to do, it cannot do it for us. We, the Filipino people, must learn to act and stand on our own 2 feet. Normal people, like you and me, just need to decide to be responsible for our own actions and keep in mind that what we do today affects the future of our children, for better or for worse. As leaders from all over the world meet this month, it is my hope that Filipinos around the world will also take the initiative to start conserving the future through their actions today.